Hey everybody, this is Father Warner and we are in the Tuesday of the third week in Lent. And our text today is taken from Daniel chapter 3 verses 34 to 43 and Matthew chapter 18 verses 21 to 35. Now, when you look at both these texts, at the heart of these texts is the word forgiveness, though of course in quite different contexts. In the book of Daniel, you will see that the forgiveness of God is being pleaded for in a very passionate way. And in the gospel, we are told of the wicked servant who could not forgive someone who owed him just a small paltry sum, and it ends with a warning. Now, I want to take you first to the first reading from the prophet Daniel, because when you look at this reading, it seems like it was written in the 6th century. The king mentioned is Nebuchadnezzar. This was during the Babylonian exile. The people of Israel were taken into exile, and there, right now in this text, the king is Nebuchadnezzar. It's the 6th century. But in reality, this book was never written in the 6th century. The narrative is from the 6th century. It was actually written in the 2nd century BCE, when Israel was ruled by the Greeks under a very cruel and oppressive king called Antiochus IV Epiphanes. So, written in the 2nd century with a Greek king as ruler, but made to sound as if it was written in the 6th century BC under Nebuchadnezzar when the people were in exile. Now, how do you explain this? Why was such a thing done? So, imagine yourself under a dictator today, one who propagates his own faith but doesn't allow you in any shape or form to propagate your faith, and then begins to put restrictions on the practice of your faith. Now, if you challenge this dictator, you'd be thrown in prison. Even worse, you might find several investigative agencies of the government at your doorstep, and then you'd be in prison with no chance of getting bail, because we know that laws are tweaked in order to make sure that people stay in jail practically forever, when really bail, as the Supreme Court in our country said quite coincidentally, is not the exception. Bail should be the rule, but that's another matter. Now, imagine if you were under such a dictator and you could not speak freely against him because you knew you'd be punished. What do? You then speak of a dictator of another era who practically mimicked the dictator you are under. So, supposing I say, remember Hitler? Remember how Hitler oppressed the Jews? Remember how he put them in gas chambers and had them arrested? And at once you will recall Hitler, but you know exactly who I'm talking about. And that's exactly how the book of Daniel was written. Oppressed under Antiochus IV Epiphanes, but made to sound as if the oppressor was King Nebuchadnezzar. Now, as I said, Antiochus IV Epiphanes was a very cruel king. And what he did was he erected a statue of the god Zeus in the temple of Jerusalem. Now, this was called the abomination of desolation. I mean, this was absolutely terrible. And then to compound matters, he went ahead and slaughtered a pig in the temple of Jerusalem. Now, all of this happened in the 2nd century BCE. But, of course, the writer could not mention Antiochus or this incident. So what does he do? He mentions Nebuchadnezzar. He says, remember that king who set up a statue of himself and then asked the Jewish people in exile to bow down and to worship? And then he reminds them of 3 young men who refused to bow down and worship. And their names, as we know from today's text, are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, really, the text of today is the prayer of one of these 3 Jewish exiles who remained faithful. And his prayer to God is, he's not praying for himself. He's not saying, Lord, save me. But really, it's a prayer of forgiveness. He is asking for forgiveness on behalf of his people who have sinned and now been brought into exile. He's asking for forgiveness as an admission of national guilt. He pleads to God. He says, God, you have brought us so low. We were the apple of your eye, but today we have been brought lower than every other nation. So what's beautiful is what he says, what all the three of them say to King Nebuchadnezzar. And listen to this. They said, even if our God would not deliver us, even if our God in his wisdom would not deliver us, and he would allow us to be put to death, we will not bow down to any other gods. We will not bow down to any other gods. Now, when you read this prayer taken from Daniel chapter 3, you'll find that this prayer of forgiveness is extremely tender, and at times it's also heartbreaking. 4 times he will say to God, do not withdraw your covenant from us, God. Do not withdraw your favor from us, God. And I love this line the most. He says, treat us gently as you, God, are gentle. I'm going to say that again. Treat us gently as you, God, are gentle. And guess what? God relented. We know that he sent the Jewish people back to Jerusalem under the king Cyrus. Now, that brings us to the gospel. And in the gospel, Peter says, Lord, how often do I have to forgive my brother? I'm not going to tell you the answer, you know it. But what Jesus was saying is, isn't that answer quite obvious, Peter? Isn't it obvious? And the answer is, as often as God would forgive you. Now, when you look at that parable, you'll realize that there was this wicked servant who owed his master 10,000 talents. First, let me explain the 10,000 talents. So a talent is equivalent to about 58 kilograms of silver. And in order to, obtain 1 talent of 58 kilograms of silver, you would have to work 15 years. Now listen to this. The servant owed his master 10,000 talents. That's 150,000 financial lifetimes. And the first question you're going to ask yourself is not, oh wow, how generous is God? But you're going to ask yourself, is God crazy? How did God ever give someone so much? And that's the point that Jesus wants to make. You have been forgiven so much. And yet when you went out, you couldn't forgive a man who owed you 100 denarii, which was just 3 months' wages. So here's the question, can you ever repay God? The answer is no. So what do? You pass it on. You pass the forgiveness on. The words are, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. But watch today's gospel, because it ends with a woe. Because if you do not forgive, you'll find yourself thrown out into the darkness where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth. Bye for now, everybody. And as you can see, there's a gentle old lady who's coming to this video. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Also, leave a comment. Please like this video, and I'd love to hear from you. Bye for now.